All right. Hey, everybody. Teching 101 here, back again for another SBS breakdown. What does it stand for? You all know at this point. SBS stands for Serious Bee Shenanigans. Yeah, they're bees when they're doing shenanigans, but very serious. You do not want to get in the honeybee's way when they're doing their shenanigans. You will get messed up. All right. This will be SBS Volume 114. We got the cover here. It is titled The God Valley Incident. And, of course, this covers the flashback, so Luffy and the Straw Hats are nowhere to be seen on the cover. Just the Rocks Pirates in all of their splendor. We got Gansui back there. Barbell's face is mainly obscured by the logo. Hey, that's more evidence that Barbell may in fact be the man with the flame scar. So Oda's trying to cover him up back there, but I don't know. I'm looking at Barbell here. Let's see. We got Whitebeard next to Kaido and Big Mom. We got Prometheus there. We have... he's no longer Wang. He has officially lost his Wang status. He's now just Ochoku. He's got green hair. We already saw that in one of the color pages, but yeah, he's there. You got Captain John getting drunk like always. You got Shiki having a grand old time. You got Silver Axe there. He's cool to see. Kyo, the mercenary. You got Don Marlin. R.I.P. Don Marlin, we'll miss you. And then we have Rocks front and center, right next to Gloriosa and Stroizen. I just realized, Stroizen, I know he's a short fella, so you really can't put him anywhere else, but Stroizen is at, like, the head of the pack of the Rocks Pirates, of all people. A person that's, like, more on, like Big Mom's, like, partner in crime rather than, like, his own member, but, like, there he is, okay. And Buckingham Stussy is actually absent from this. She actually shows up in the inside covers. So I don't know if you guys know this. This is not carried over into the English version of the One Piece magazines, but the Japanese version of the magazine, not the magazine, the tankobons. I have a copy right here. I picked this up when I was in Japan last year. This is volume 111. The covers that you see that is always like mostly like promoted and everything, these are actually like a dust jacket. And then when you take the dust jacket off, you get a secondary cover underneath. There's always a rule with these, and they always include Panda Man. So you can see here, Panda Man is actually Loki in the inside cover. So on the inside cover of Volume 114, you do see Stussy up in the corner. She's in the O of One Piece. She's just hanging out. So I thought that was really funny. So yeah, Volume 114 looks really cool. And in terms of the quality of this SBS, it's okay. It's more middle of the road. We don't learn anything truly bombastic. In the last volume, volume 113, we learned about the calendar system. The calendar system, for God's sake. I'm still waiting for a census in the One Piece world. I'm waiting for Oda to explain how many people live in the entire world, different regions and things like that. That's the next big thing I'm waiting for the world building. But this SBS is okay. We learned some stuff about Shamrock. There's a theory involving Shanks and Shamrock that's solved, so that's pretty cool. And I'm just going to start off with the one that I want to talk about most. Many of you might think this is not the most important question, but it is to me. We get Den Mushi lore. Do you want to learn about more Den Mushi lore? You know I do. All right, here we go. You've mentioned that Den Mushi don't mind being captured by humans because they get fed. Does that mean the Den Mushi kept by the Straw Hat crew get to eat delicious meals cooked by Sanji? I'd love to know the details of how the crew takes care of their Den Mushi. I salute the person that asked this question. I really do. I want to learn more about the Den Mushi. Absolutely. So the Straw Hats didn't really have that many of them pre-time skip. I think occasionally you'll see them talking through them, but like having a dedicated one on the ship, really not so much. After the Straw Hats got the Sunny, I guess I should say, they started having Den Mushi and stuff. Like they had big upgrades to the ship that like Frankie added and things, so they probably picked up a few Den Mushi at Water 7, I would assume. So Oda goes on to explain that there is one long-distance Den Mushi that's on the ship, and additionally, 5 members of the crew, Nami, Usopp, Sanji, Robin, and Frankie, each carry baby Den Mushis that are short distance, okay? So that's pretty much something we've already known about. The bigger Den Mushis can kind of communicate with the entire network, and then you have the baby Den Mushis that I guess would eventually grow into the bigger Den Mushis, and so I guess the longer you keep a baby Den Mushi with you, it's kind of like a Pokemon. The more they level up and they gain more range, I guess. I don't know. But yeah, so that's basically how it works there. Basically, as long as they have water, Den Mushi can survive for about 3 months without food. However, since communicating via thought waves uses a lot of energy, it's best to give them some leftovers after use. Okay, I'm not even kidding. I just made a video a little while ago, like a few days ago, about how the mail system works in the One Piece world, like how people send letters. Well, I also had to bring up the Den Mushi because they have like fax machines and shit attached to them. And I didn't mention it in that video, but I was thinking that, like, well, wait a minute. The Den Mushi are still biological, they're organisms, they're snails, right? So they're using this, like, psychic, network in order to communicate with one another, and human beings are basically taking advantage of that and, like, domesticating the snails to use that as, like, a cell network to communicate with everybody, okay? But they still have to use their own, like, energy in order to communicate, right? And I was thinking, like, attaching things like fax machines to a Den Mushi, like having a Den Mushi look at an image, like take a picture of this volume cover and then fax it to somebody else. How much energy would that take for the snail to, like, process the image and, like, send it via, psychic waves, Like, that would probably take a lot of energy. So you got to make sure to feed your Den Mushi, and their favorite foods are cabbage or lettuce. Apparently, on days where they get sprinkled with water from a watering can, they can get so excited that their signal can reach all the way to the other side of the world. Now, that's awesome. You're just picturing a bunch of the Den Mushi all hanging out. Sometimes they hang out in Nami's tangerine grove on the upper deck. Robin has a flower bed. Usopp also has his little pop green garden where he grows his ammunition for his Kabuto and everything. So they're just probably, like, chilling out in there while they're not in use. And whenever the Straw Hats land in an island and they need to go take the Den Mushi to stay in touch with one another, they'll go and grab the baby Den Mushi hanging out on the tangerine groves and stuff like that. There is I think it's chapter 500, and I have it right here, 587. There's a volume cover of just a fan request or just Oda having fun, drawing Ivankov and Dragon with watering cans, sprinkling the Den Mushi, and they look so happy and content. They're just like, yeah, this is nice, right? And so I don't know exactly if Oda was being serious with being able to reach the other side of the world, but we know the range of the Den Mushi is effectively pretty long. I imagine most of the time it's like relay points, right? Like if you're in the North Blue and you want to communicate to the other side of the world, which would be the South Blue, then maybe not one specific Den Mushi could reach that far, but like one Den Mushi communicates with another, communicates with another, communicates with another as sort of like relay points, and then eventually it will connect. But I guess based off of the happiness level of the Den Mushi, so they really are like Pokemon when you think about it that way, based off of their happiness level, the range of their psychic reverberations can be enhanced all the way to cover the entire planet. I'm going to say that's legit, like that's a real thing. And there's more about Den Mushi science that we need to learn about. There's like a whole biology textbook that can be written about these things, okay? So that was honestly the most interesting question to me. Anyway, that's that one question. All right, now moving on to the others, whatever, the other questions. So this is a really quick one. I'm not going to cover this for too much because I already made a whole damn video about it. This is just a question referring to Gansui, Captain John, and Gil Bastar's Devil Fruit's abilities during God Valley. So Gansui has the Bomb fruit, Captain John has the Jiki no Mi, and Gil Bastar has the Horo no Mi. These are devil fruits that are used by Mr. 5, Gem of the Border, Eustace Captain Kidd, and Perona. And we already knew that. Made a whole video about it already. This is just kind of clarifying that. One thing to bring up, though, is that when Gansui used his ability, I always assumed he was using it in the same way that Mr. 5 did with his boogers. Mr. 5 would pick his nose and then fling his booger bombs at people and they would blow up. And we see Gansui using a similar kind of method where he took what looked like a booger and flung it at Captain John and it blew up. Apparently, Gansui's fingers are too big to pick his nose. So that wasn't a booger, it was like a piece of grime or something that he had on his body that he used. But you can use, Oda just basically goes on to clarify that not every single user of the devil fruit is going to use it in the exact same way. And actually, here's something to bring up. there were people that had the sun god devil fruit before Luffy. They've just never been able to awaken it, right? We know Joy Boy had the power of the Hito Hito no Mi model sun god Nika back during the Void Century, and we know Luffy has it now. It was mentioned by the Gorosei. There were other people that had that power in the 800-year gap, right? It didn't go straight from Joy Boy to Luffy. It's just they were never able to truly awaken its real power, right? And they might have used the power completely different from the way Luffy used it. They might have used it in a really dumbass way or something like that. Dropped into a volcano or something and died. I don't really know. But yeah, that's just to clarify that Gilbastar, Captain John, and Gansui all had Devil Fruit abilities that are currently used by people in the story, but they might have used it a little differently. Question 2. This is another really good one. Are there any standard activities or games that Luffy and the crew play during their parties? This is what I have been saying. I would love so much if Oda included this stuff in the actual manga. Maybe it's a time issue. Maybe, like, you know, there's like, oh, we have to hurry up and get through this arc. We don't have time to do all this kind of stuff. But, dude, I really wish in between story arcs we would have more time with just, like, maybe just one dedicated chapter in between each arc where the Straw Hats are just hanging out and being friends and having a family. And, you know, they're nakama, right? That's the whole idea kind of the story. It'd be nice if we could see that more. I know we see it a little bit more in the anime, but it'd be cool to see it in the manga too, right? So, Oda says there are plenty of activities that they all do when they're hanging out and partying, whether it be a party after a big battle, like after they defeated Kaido, or they're just chilling out on the ship. Remember, like, just traveling from Wano to Egghead, that was like a couple of weeks, I think, or at least a week on the open sea. They have to do something to pass the time, right? So Oda says that Brook gets into the swing of things. He immediately starts playing the piano or the violin. Frankie joins in playing the guitar. Frankie can canonically play the guitar, and he can play it well, too. We don't really see it all that often. It's like Nami wearing glasses. She wears glasses every now and then. You just don't see it too often. You know, then we have the singing and the chorus beginning, the chopsticks in the nose gag. That's always a thing. But we have the Usopp quiz, where Usopp does trivia. He passes out little blackboards and everybody writes down Usopp trivia. There are penalty games. Dude, I need to do a whole dedicated video on the Usopp trivia, on the Usopp quizzes. They're happening. It's happening now. I'm going to do a whole dedicated video to that. All right? What kind of questions does Usopp ask? It would be so funny if, like, after they just finished, like, liberating Wano and defeating Kaido, one of the Yonko, Usopp hands out, like, hey, Luffy, what was Kaido's devil fruit named? And Luffy's like, I don't know, he was a dragon, a giant snake eel, like, I don't know, like, that would just be so funny. They also play board games, arm wrestling, they play Jenga, so Jenga is canonically a thing in the One Piece world. Dude, a few years ago, I made a video on if the Straw Hats were to play D&D. If the Straw Hats all got together one night to just play D&D in the dining room, who would play? And it was just so funny to, like, imagine that scene where, like, originally you would think Zoro would not want to play that because it's not really his scene, but then if Sanji wanted to play because Nami and Robin were there, Zoro would show up and he would just be like, you know what, I'm going to play and I'm going to be dedicated. Zoro shows up with all the rules memorized, you know, just to spite Sanji. I think we decided Usopp and Robin would be the best DMs to play Dungeons and Dragons. We talked about, like, if Chopper was the DM, it would be really funny. It would just be like, hey guys, you're in the chocolate castle kingdom next to the cotton candy land, you know, like, or all that kind of stuff. And that could be maybe canon now, so I'll take it. Let's go with it. Weapon darts, so, you know, Zoro uses his swords and they throw axes and darts and knives and see who can get, like, a bullseye. That's cool. Drinking contests, speed eating contests, Jinbei's dice gambling, so Jinbei's there like a Yakuza boss and they're all gambling. Blindfolded plank walking, sumo, you know, Luffy would be into the sumo, Usopp's imitation show, etc., you know, as it goes. The standard thing above all is probably singing. They're mostly going to hang out and, you know, sing, and there's Pink Sake, but there's other songs too. It would be really cool if in the next SBS, Oda, you know, maybe reveals a couple more songs that exist in the One Piece world. They can't sing Pink Sake every single night. There's got to be a few more, right? So, I love that question. I just love the idea of just more, like, camaraderie between, like, you know, the Straw Hats, you know, when they're traveling between islands. Like, what do? They can't just, like, you know, okay, Zoro, tighten the mizzen mast, and, Jinbei, you're at the helm, okay, and Sanji, cook lunch. Like, okay, yes, they're obviously doing that stuff, but there's other stuff going on too, so that's just great to learn about. Okay, learning some new stuff about the Kuja. So the reader is asking Oda, does the captain of the Kuja pirates always become the Empress of Amazon Lily? Because Boa was the Empress, also the captain, same thing with Gloriosa and Shakuyaku, so there's obviously a connection there. Oda, confirms and sort of, clarifies it's the other way around, okay? So the Empress of Amazon Lily will always become the captain of the Kuja Pirates. How do you become the Empress of Amazon Lily? Because it's not a hereditary thing. It's not like, the queen has a child or the Empress has a child and then that child grows up to be the next Empress. In the very first chapter, we get introduced to Amazon Lily after Luffy got sent there, as Oda's giving, build up to this place. It says that in this country, strength is beauty and beauty is strength, okay? They're the same thing. Remember that on Amazon Lily, they have a big-ass battle arena. Why else would you have that, right? That battle arena is like the ceremonial place where the empresses of Amazon Lily would probably be crowned, right? In fact, we open up Amazon Lily while seeing two members of the Kuja, Poppy and Pansy, brawling it out on this arena. And I think Poppy just absolutely devastates Pansy, just punches her square in the face. And the idea that the strongest woman on the island is also the most beautiful. Okay, and so that strength comes status as Empress, all right? So that's how the Empress is decided. We also learn a little bit more about how the earrings, the snake earrings, you see Shakuyaku and Gloriosa and Tritoma and Boa all wearing. Yeah, they are basically they don't have crowns or tiaras or diadems or anything like that, but those earrings are sort of the symbol of the Empress, of the royalty of Amazon Lily. It's sort of the closest thing they have to that. After you are no longer the Empress, I guess you're allowed to keep the earrings or you cannot wear them anymore. It's really up to you whether or not you do it. There's nothing that's set in stone that when you step down as Empress, you have to take off your earrings and present them to the next Empress. They can just make more of them. So it's more of just an overall status symbol, right? Next question. This is about Moria. And if you remember, back during when God Valley was going on in the chapters, we also had the cover pages. We were still in Yamato's Holy Inari Shrine pilgrimage, and Yamato and Okiku and Ulti and Page One arrive at this temple. Ocho was there as well, the leader of the Yakuza of the Ringo region. They were in the Ringo region. They were going to this old shrine that was all beaten up and dilapidated, and there was a grave that was there of a person that was born in the West Blue but was raised in Wano, and we learn that the person was Kozuki Moria. And so that got everybody thinking, wait a minute, what the hell is going on here? Is that, Gecko Moria? And the answer is obviously yes, because we know that Moria was in Wano at one point, but Oda gives us the whole backstory here, or at least expands on it a little bit. Oda gives us some bullet points. He's like, okay, well, we know that Moria fought against Kaido. He mentions as much during Thriller Bark when he sort of had that psychotic snap whenever they mention Kaido's name. After his entire crew was killed, he developed a personality that relies on others, and that's why he built an entire army of zombies. And his slogan, his catchphrase sort of became, go out there and make me king of the pirates, instead of himself like Luffy. Well, okay, Luffy relies on other people too, but Moria was slothful. He was slovenly about it. He was just I don't want to do anything. You go out there and hurry up and make me king of the pirates. I'm not getting off my ass until someone out there makes me king of the pirates. Luffy's out there being very practical and direct with it. He just realizes he can't do everything himself, and so he has his crew helping him out. But Moria was just lazy, right? There's a whole thing that the original 7 warlords of the sea embody the 7 deadly sins, and Boa would be lust, and Crocodile would be greed or maybe pride, and then you have Moria, who would be sloth. I mean, it's very obvious for Moria there. And it's also, he possessed the corpse of the legendary samurai Ryuma and the famous swords Shusui. So here's what Oda explains to us. Moria was born in the West Blue. That was something that was confirmed in a Viva card, so Oda doesn't do anything to retcon that. He was still born in the West Blue. However, when he was a young boy, he drifted ashore in Wano. The West Blue does border the New World, so it is possible to go from the West Blue to cross the Calm Belt into the New World. It'd be a very risky journey, and we don't know how the hell that happened. But maybe his family were also pirates at something, and they were out there, and he got kicked off the ship, kind of like Frankie, maybe. Anyway, he washed ashore in the Ringo region of Wano. Not really sure how you wash ashore at Wano because it's on top of a waterfall. Whatever, it doesn't matter. He washes ashore at Wano, okay, in the Ringo region, and the people there take him in and treat him very kindly and raise him as one of their own, okay? And so he got the name Kozuki in honor of his strength. So even before he fought Kaido, he was known to the people of Wano as Kozuki Moria. So they gave him that name as sort of an honorary title. Don't really know if Moria, how old he was at this time. Did he know his own name? Was he a baby? I'm not really sure. I think the implication is he was old enough to like know his name, and he was just really strong as he grew up, and so the people gave him the honorary name Kozuki, right? And so Moria is he's the oldest of the original warlords. I think Moria is 50 years old right now. So like 50 years old even. So how old was he when he drifted to Wano? It would have been long before Kaido took over. Kaido started taking over around 28 years ago. Before that, around 30 years ago, is when Oden left. So it wasn't until after Oden left is when Orochi started taking over everything with Higurashi and Semimaru, and then Higurashi asked Kaido to come and set up his operation there. So it would have been before all that. It would have been long before all of that. It might have been like even around the same time we opened Oden's flashback, which was like 42 years ago, something like that. Might have been around the same time Moria washed ashore there. We don't know. So anyway, he's raised in Wano. He gets the title of Kozuki. He leaves. He goes out to sea to be a pirate. He was present at Logtown 24 years ago during the execution of Goldie Roger. So he was definitely there. So Moria, he was born in the West, ended up in the New World somehow, then left, then ended up on the other side of the planet in the East Blue. How the hell did all this happen? Apparently he was, back in the day, he was a really adventurous pirate. So shortly after the execution of Goldie Roger, I think it was around 23 years ago, Oden was still alive at this point. Moria learns about what's going on in Wano. He learns that Kaido and Orochi are taking over, and he's basically like, that's my homeland. You do not do this to the people that raised me. That was his family. So he goes back to Wano, and that's where he fights Kaido. And we actually do see a few scenes of that happening. So after he lost, though, and his entire crew was wiped out as well, and apparently he still had the Kage no Mi at this point, because we see, like, brick bats fighting alongside him and things like that. So he had his devil fruit at this point. He was pretty strong. So Moria comes back to save his family that raised him. He does lose, though. Kaido beats him. After his loss, Moria felt so ashamed that he left Wano without saying a word. The people assumed he had died and built a grave for him. Since I cut this from the main story, it's just a need-to-know bit of trivia. So once again, it's just a thing that Oda was like, I really wanted to include this in Wano, and I just didn't have the time for it. You know, I'm always curious about exactly how that works. You know, whenever, because it comes up a lot in manga. It's always like, well, I wanted to include this, I just didn't have the time for it. So I'm assuming it's like the editors or Shueisha itself, like the big wigs in the top of the company. I just don't know how this works, where like they're basically going over to Oda or Kubo or Kishimoto or like anybody, because this shows up a lot in manga. Like most mangaka will say of long-running series will be like, well, I wanted to include this, I just didn't have time. And it's like, okay, so did they just show up and be like, hey, you got to get Wano wrapped up in like this year or this many chapters? And it's just Oda's like, okay, I guess I can't include that. Like, I'm curious of like how the hierarchy of this works. You know what I mean? Like, who decides like, hey, Wano is already 150 chapters. It can't go any further than that. It needs to stop now. And Oda's like, okay, I guess. You know, I don't know how it works. I'm just curious, right? I understand trying to keep everything maybe tight for like the plot lines and everything. You don't want to go off on too many tangents. But then it's like stuff like this that gets omitted, right? Like, and the same thing with like Zoro's family tree and stuff that was also going to be included that we learned about in an SBS. So I don't know. I should look a little bit more into that, exactly how that whole system works. Anyway, so Moria just leaves. And apparently also grave robs the tomb of the sword god as a consolation prize as he leaves. So that's the only thing. Moria was raised by the people of Ringo. The place, by the way, where all the tombstones are, where the most, you know, like honored samurai are buried with their blades in the Ringo region. And Moria cared enough. Oda does clarify that that's the reason Moria went back. Moria didn't go back to steal Ryuma's corpse or anything. He went back to save the people of of Wano from his attack. Okay, so that was like his family, so he wanted to go save them. But he also desecrates and grave robs and steals the corpse of Ryuma and Shusui, and then leaves without telling anyone. So Moria is a rather conflicted individual. Maybe he thought that, like, okay, my crew is annihilated. I'm going to take the body of Ryuma, reanimate him with a really strong shadow. He ended up getting Brooks. And then I'm going to come back here, and then I'm going to defeat Kaido next time. And then maybe over the decades, he just got more slovenly and lazy and just like, yeah, I want to go back to Wano and beat Kaido at some point. I just don't have enough zombies yet. We have over 900, Lord Moria. Yeah, well, when we get to 1,000 or maybe 5,000, I'll maybe think about it, right? Like, Moria just became depressed and he stopped, thinking about it, I guess, at that point. But there you go. That's the story with Moria. We have an interesting question involving Stussy, the name of her devil fruit. Now, this is more of like Japanese like linguistics and like how hiragana and katakana sort of work and everything like that. So, okay. There's a video game, One Piece, I think Unlimited World Red, yes, where there is a villain named Patrick Redfield, and he has the ability of the mythical Bato Bato no Mi vampire. He turns into a vampire, not really a real vampire. He doesn't even really drink blood in the game. He just, like, absorbs your life essence or some shit like that, right? Well, anyway, that was the mythical Bato Bato no Mi, right? And it is written in the video game like this, okay? Pay attention to this character. It would normally be pronounced Su, but that is not the way it is pronounced here. It's put here as like a little smaller marker to denote a pause, like a slight like inflection on a particular syllable. Okay, so it's Bato, Bato no Mi. Okay, you would also see this in a couple of other words, like if you were going to say bed in Japanese, you would also see the little marker, and it would be beddo or kappu. Like that's the way that you say certain words, okay? That just denotes a slight pause, and then you're going to put more inflection on that syllable, right? The thing is, not all devil fruit names in hiragana actually use that marker. So the question is, why is Stussy's devil fruit include the marker, but no other devil fruits do? And they mention Unlimited World Red is like, is it because there was a devil fruit in the video game that used that particular spelling, that used those particular hiragana, and you wanted to stay consistent with it, even though it was a video game and is non-canon? And Oda's like, yup, you nailed it. That's exactly what it was. There was already a non-canon devil fruit that had the Bato Bato no Mi, and Oda was aware of that, and he was like, well, I could keep it should just be written like this without the little markers, but Oda's like, well, there's already a bat fruit that already has those markers, so I'm just going to do it that way. And that's what we ended up with, right? Also, Oda mentions that it kind of sounds like the way you would pronounce Kit Kat, as in the Kit Kat bar, the candy in Japanese. So there you go. By the way, Kit Kats are huge in Japan. There are so many different flavors and everything like that when you visit. Make sure to pick up some Kit Kat bars, because you will find flavors that do not exist anywhere else in the world. All right? So that's just something I just want to bring up, because it just involves like the way that a certain devil fruit is phrased, is written. Okay. You know that cloaked figure that was talking to the Gorosei way back at Reverie? Yeah, was that Shamrock or Shanks? Boom! It was Shamrock! All right, there we go. That theory was taken care of, right? I mean, it was a coin flip of a chance. Who was it going to be? It was going to be Shamrock, right? So the individual that says, like, I'm here to talk to you about a certain it was in fact Shamrock. Was he referring to Shanks? Probably. Was he referring to Blackbeard? Maybe. I don't know. It is interesting that the Gorosei specifically still mentioned to him, like, oh, hey, we would normally not be meeting with you right now, but given your status. So I don't know exactly what they meant by that. Did they mean that, like, okay, you're a God's Knight, so we wouldn't normally be meeting with you, but you are also a member of the Figarland family, so that's why we are meeting with you? Or is it the specific reference to Shanks? Is it like, well, it's the middle of the reverie, we're busy, we don't have time to just meet with a God's Knight, even though God's Knights are pretty high up on the standing, and Shamrock is a commander of the God's Knights. Even so, the Gorosei are the ones that are at the very top. Remember, Garling was the supreme commander of the God's Knights, and even when he strolled into the room of authority when he was made a Gorosei, and the other Gorosei didn't know that yet, they were looking at him like, hey, what are you doing in here? Know your place, Garling. You can't just march in here whenever you feel like it. We outrank you. All right. So even doesn't matter if you're commander or supreme commander. The Gorosei are still like, you're below us. You know your place. All right. So maybe they were referring to because Shamrock is the twin of Shanks, or because he was just a member of the Figarland family specifically, they were going to meet with him, right? We still don't know what exactly he was saying to them, but it was Shamrock. Oda also goes on to say that he forgot to mention to the anime staff at Toei that wasn't actually Shanks, it was somebody else. So the same voice actor that plays Shanks, Shuichi Ikeda, still played Shamrock in that scene, but it was supposed to be Shamrock, not Shanks. Also, it was mentioned, I don't think it was revealed in this SBS. I think it was revealed a while ago, actually, when Volume 113 came out, who the voice actor of Shamrock was going to be, and it's revealed to be Sueda Kenjiro, who plays, I know he played Kishibe in Chainsaw Man, he plays Overhaul in My Hero Academia, he played Yonji in One Piece, so he's already played a character in One Piece, he played Sanji's brother Yonji Vinsmoke, right? So Suda Kenjiro is playing Shamrock, and so Oda goes on to say that, like, I forgot to tell the anime staff back then that it wasn't really Shanks, but also at the same time, Suda Kenjiro is playing Shamrock, and apparently he's, like, perfect for the role, and so Oda's like, it's probably a good idea I didn't pick a voice actor back then. So that also kind of gives, sheds a little bit light on how voice actors are chosen, because think about that scene. That scene happened all the way back in, like, chapter, what was it, like, 906, 907? Like, it was a while ago, right? And so that was long before Shamrock was ever introduced. That was before Wano, for God's sake. It was right before Wano started. And so imagine if Oda was like, oh yeah, this is Shanks's brother, but no one's supposed to know that yet. We need to cast a different voice actor for him. And so I guess the Toei staff would have been like, okay, let's get some people in here. And Oda probably would have ended up picking somebody else. Now, ultimately, it doesn't matter because it's occurred before when a character will show up. I think Odin, because Odin, you hear Odin's voice during Zou when Momonosuke is like reminiscing about the death of Odin. You do hear the voice, and they did get a voice actor for that. And I can't remember if it's the same voice actor they later used in Wano. I think it was a different dude. So it's not a big deal. They could have just casted somebody else back then, and then he would have played Shamrock differently than Shanks in that scene. Although that would have also been the tall tale sign that it was clearly somebody else because they had different voice actors for him. And then they could have picked Suda Kenjiro later to play him. So it's not a huge deal, but that does confirm some stuff that, yes, that was Shamrock, not Shanks. So Shanks did not get a special audience with the Gorosei. So there you go. Let's see. Oh, this is a great one. So you know how during God Valley you see Roger and he doesn't have his mustache yet, his trademark mustache, which may or may not be nose hairs. He just has like the grizzled 5 o'clock shadow, right? He has like kind of what I have going on here, right? And so the Jolly Roger, though, of the Roger Pirates was the same. It still had Roger's like twirly mustache. And so Oda was like, yeah, I got a lot of messages about this. It's udon. Yeah, Roger was a really big fan of udon, so that's why he included that on the Jolly Roger. Okay. Whenever we get a flashback to Roger, like when he first met Rayleigh, or maybe a flashback even earlier than that, when Roger decided to go out to sea to become a pirate or some shit, the story of how Roger got the straw hat, I guarantee you right now, I'm calling it, there's going to be a scene where Roger's going to be drinking udon or eating udon noodles to kind of confirm that, like, man, I really like udon. I should probably put that as my Jolly Roger. Oda's going to include something like that now. I guarantee it. It's sort of a joke. It's just like, oh, yeah, I guess it doesn't make any sense for him to have the Jolly Roger, but hey, maybe he had his aspirations. Maybe he's like, one day, mateys, I would wish to have a mustache as epic as this. And so the Jolly Roger came first and his trademark mustache came later. There you go. I mean, that's the best way to have it. Hey there, editing teching here. Just wanted to drop in and give 2 more SBS answers really quick that involve God Valley. They don't go into great detail, but they're the names of Rox's ship and his sword. So that's pretty much it. Rox's sword is named Eclipse, so I guess Rox was a big fan of the Twilight series. I guess the third book, Eclipse, was probably his favorite one. And then his ship is called Rox's Fury. So Rox had a lot of confidence in himself. He was just like, oh, I'm going to name my ship Rox's Fury because I'm Rox and I got some fury. So yeah, nothing really that crazy. Just like with Roger's sword Ace, it was probably a Saijo Owazamono, and also like Roger's sword, we have no idea where Eclipse is right now. So where are all these really rare Saijo Owazamono grade swords? They probably have to be ending up somewhere. And also, where's Rox's Fury for that matter, right? Like, did the ship just sink in the hole with the rest of God Valley, or is somebody out there sailing it? We don't know, but it was mentioned in the SBS. We got the names for those objects. Question about Shiki. All right, so Shiki's still alive. That's something cool. He is currently 73 years old. We also learn about his swords, Oto and Kogarashi. We learn about this during Chapter 0 and then also Strong World, the movie. So Oto and Kogarashi are confirmed to be Ryo Wazamono grade blades. That's the same classification as the Yubashiri, the sword that Zoro got from Ippon Matsu way back at Logtown, right? So the Ryo Wazamonos are interesting because there's 4 levels of Meito. There's Wazamono, Ryo Wazamono, Owazamono, and Saijo Owazamono. And the Ryo Wazamono, we don't learn that many about. There's 50 of them, but we don't know that many about them, right? I think, no, I think Shigure is Tashigi's sword. I think that's just a regular Wazamono. See, we don't know that many Ryo Wazamono. I think Mr. 11's sword, Kashu, I think that one was also a Ryo Wazamono. I also always say Ryu Wazamono because Ryu means dragon, but it's Ryo Wazamono, not Ryu Wazamono. So yeah, his swords are Meito rank, and we actually also learned where he grew up. He did not grow up in Wano. A lot of people wanted to say Wano, and I even thought that maybe he was the one that tried to fight against Kaido instead of Moria before we knew about Moria's full real name. No, he didn't grow up in Wano country. He grew up in Yano country, which is like a rougher version of Wano country. So all right. In the One Piece world now, we now canonically have a place called Wano, Yano, and Kano. Just throwing that out. A lot of countries with a similar naming scheme, all right? So I want to learn more about Yano country. I want to learn about the rough and tumble place. It's like there was already like lawless lands in the Wano country. So like is Yano just like all of the lawless lands in Wano dialed up to 10 all the time, everywhere? Where is this place at? So yeah, geography is everything on the Yano country, coming soon, right after I do my video on Pants Hazard, which is the place Vegapunk's cousin works at, which is also canon. But yeah, it's nice to see Shiki is still alive. He likes gold leaf sushi and hates burdock root. Bardock root? I think that is actually where Bardock is named. Goku's dad from Dragon Ball, because they're all named after like vegetables and stuff. You know, so he doesn't Shiki didn't care for Bardock, father of Goku, too much. You know, it's just the original special was good, but then they started including Bardock and all these extra things and changing his personality around. You know, I can understand why Shiki was not a fan of Bardock going Super Saiyan. I mean, it was a cool scene, but like, I don't know. I just feel like they messed up his personality after a while and his motivations and things like that. So yeah, I get you, Shiki. I think we understand. All right. Anyway, let's see what's next. Oda drew Yamato older. We have the 40 and 60 years, same thing that Oda did with all the other Straw Hats and Sabo and Ace and everybody. But at age 40, Yamato says, "It's Wano country. Let's go and have a visit, Luffy," implying that Yamato 100% is going to join the Straw Hats at some point, implying that they were out at sea going on adventures, and then they ended up back near Wano country. And so Yamato was like, "Hey, Luffy, it's Wano. Let's head back and say hi." So there's that. And then at age 60, Yamato says, "I don't want to become a big shot." Now, in this scene, Yamato is wearing the same outfit as the Scabbards are currently wearing, with the crescent moon, with the Kozuki symbol, implying that Yamato is a member of the Scabbards or in, like, the higher echelon of Wano. And at age 60, Yamato is saying, "I don't want to become a big shot." Is that the implication that Yamato might become a daimyo? Possibly. Shogun doesn't make any sense, but daimyo maybe, because remember, like, some of the members of the daimyos, you know, they got sent through time. You know, like, for example, Thinking actually really quick. Actually, wait a minute. Hold on a minute. They might not be. Okiku was sent through time. Yes, Okiku is currently the daimyo of the Ringo region. Kawamatsu was not sent through time. Inuarashi and Nekomamushi were not sent through time, and Denjiro was not sent through time. Right, so they're all daimyos right now. The only one that traveled through time was Okiku. Right, so she's 20 years like younger than everybody else because of the time jump, right? But Nekomamushi, Inuarashi, Denjiro, and Kawamatsu are 20 years older, you know, like because they didn't travel through time. So maybe like in his old age, you know, Denjiro is like in his 80s or 90s, and he's like, oh, I'm about to die, you know, I give the Kibi region over to you, Yamamoto. Not Yamamoto, Yamato. I give you the title Shigekune Yamamoto Genryusai, captain of Squad 1, as the new daimyo of the Kibi region, and then Denjiro dies or something like that, right? And so maybe Yamato is just like, I don't want to be in charge. I don't want to have that. Okay. So then we have Yamato in the bad future at age 40. Yamato's hair looks more like Odin's, but more like a mushroom. So not really Odin's, but kind of like Odin's. Like, I am Odin. And then at age 60 in the bad universe, Yamato is just dead. Burned alive in the same way that Odin was. So, I mean, I guess if nothing else, it shows that maybe Yamato needs to, like, not follow. Like, I think Oda's making a joke here of, like, Yamato wants to be like Odin. If Yamato was super 100% dedicated to be like Odin, Yamato would also change his hair and also eventually just get boiled alive. So I guess that's the story of what happens there. And I think those are all the major... Oh, no, one more. We find out the name of Shank's and Shamrock's mom. That's kind of important because we never learned that before, right? Okay, so Shank said, we don't even know her face, by the way. Every time we see this woman, it's always from behind. So we just know that she has red hair because people mentioned that she had red hair. Garling was blonde, so that's why, you know, the red hair of Shanks and Shamrock come from their mother's side. But her name was Magnolia. So there you go. So Garling went to God Valley, met this woman, Magnolia. They had a night of passion, and then she got pregnant, and then gave birth to Shanks and Shamrock, and then Garling came back a year or so later and stabbed her and killed her. And then Dragon tried to save her kids. Shamrock ended up getting taken by the Celestial Dragons, and Shanks ended up getting taken by the Roger Pirates, right? But yes, her name was Magnolia. This is a woman we see in the God Valley flashback in the anime. I'm pretty sure this is not supposed to be Magnolia, but, you know, it's just a placeholder until I guess we finally see what she actually looked like, if we ever do. Thanks for watching, everybody. I'll leave full links down below to the Reddit post, also Pew Piece over on Twitter, which is where a lot of this information was originally posted, so thanks to them. Thanks for watching, everybody. Like I said, this SBS, it was okay. It was a good middle of the road, you know, kind of SBS. There's some that we don't learn that many things about, like it's mostly just, you know, well, I'm always a big fan of the world building questions, right? So like any question about like, hey, Oda, how do bakeries work in the One Piece world? Like, oh, I want to know. You know, how does like merchant vessels, how do they transport things in the One Piece world? Like, I'm all for that. But I can understand why some people are not that interested in that sort of stuff. But anyway, thanks for watching the video, everybody. This will be Teching Barry signing out. Later, everybody.